it's my country, and we were there on Remembrance Day when, of course, we commemorate all those amazingly brave, mainly young men who gave their lives for this country so it could be free and not under the jackboot of tyranny. And here we are with two coppers the same age as many of those guys who gave their lives coming to my door and in what I took as being tyrannical, really.
Allison Pearson is Britain's greatest newspaper columnist, a best-selling novelist, TV presenter, and now host of the boundary-pushing Planet Normal podcast. She is a journalist who challenges authority, pushes boundaries, and always fights for her readers at the Daily Telegraph. It doesn't matter if the cause is unpopular, goes against the woke agenda, or infuriates the establishment, Allison will fight for what's right. So over the past year, that has meant at great personal cost standing up for persecuted Jews the world over in the face of an onslaught of hate from pro-Hamas intimidators. But Allison is the opposite of hateful. I can personally vouch for this. And that's why it was so shocking to hear that at 9:40 a.m. on Remembrance Sunday, two police officers turned up at the door of her Essex home to tell her she was being investigated over a post on X from over a year ago. As the front page of the Daily Telegraph revealed today, they claimed it had stirred up racial hatred. But would they tell her what post justified this egregious waste of police resources? Of course not. Or the name of the accuser, or as the police called them, the victim? Of course not. And this is Essex Police, by the way, whose record of crime solving is beyond abysmal, like almost every force in the country, with less than 15% of crimes solved in the past year. So it's much easier, isn't it, to hound one of the country's most important journalists into silence under Section 17 of the Public Order Act 1986, relating to material allegedly likely to intend or cause racial hatred. This is Keir Starmer's Starsi Britain, where free speech has been smashed and those who challenge the narrative can be put behind bars. As Elon Musk has said in Allison's support today, this needs to stop. Just ask the devastated relatives of Peter Lynch, a Brexiteer who liked to fight the establishment and in the wake of the overreach by the powers that be following the Southport massacre, found himself locked up for 2 years and 8 months in a judicial disgrace before ending up dead behind bars. Or the Tory councillor husband of Lucy Connolly, who is languishing in prison for a post on X. Or the grandmother and carer Julie Sweeney, who saw the same consequences for a post to a small Facebook group that she almost immediately regretted and deleted. But of course, these are the same authorities who will ignore a pro-Hamas protester giving a Nazi salute in front of Jewish people without doing a thing. And you think I'm exaggerating? Watch this footage from the weekend.
Gone to a Nazi salute. He's just gone for it on a Nazi salute in front of you. You saw that. He just did a Nazi salute, goose stepping, and a Nazi salute in front of you. You did nothing. How dare you? You saw that, him do a Nazi salute. You let him walk past you while he was goose stepping and did a Nazi salute in front of a whole bunch of children. How dare you?
I saw that. I did see it, and we're trying to.
No, you let him walk past you. And you did nothing to stop him.
Run after him. Trying to see where he's gone.
All of you officers watched him do that as he did a Nazi salute and goose.
See where he's gone.
Why did you not stop him there and then? You let him walk past until I made a fuss. How dare you?
I've been looking, trying to see where he's gone. Someone could have just grabbed hold of him. He was an old guy.
An example of the police literally looking the other way. But with Allison Pearson, let me tell you, they've messed with the wrong woman. She won't be silenced, and she has the backing of the few remaining free speech warriors left. As she wrote in her column today, on Sunday morning, I suppose there was a certain grim satisfaction in knowing that here I was living proof that two-tier justice exists in the UK. And I'm delighted to say Alison is here now for today's uncancelled interview. Allison Pearson, I mean, seriously, I know this is almost sublime, it's ridiculous, but I don't see any sort of funny side to this. I think it's terrifying, it's chilling, it's a waste of police resources. And according to the briefing to your newspaper today, the police are still investigating this as a crime.
Well, I've been very keen to come on Outspoken, Dan, as you know, and but I didn't know I'd be coming on as a potential jailbird.
Perfect day for it.
I'm very glad the great Dan Wootton is prepared to associate with a non-crime hate incident. Yeah, it is. At one level, it's mad, isn't it? It's farcical.
Ludicrous, yep.
What could I possibly have done that would deserve a visit from two policemen, given, as you know, and the viewers will know, that they don't go to burglaries or certain domestic violence things, they don't attend. So the fact that they would come to my house, two of them, to talk to me about something I posted on X, Twitter, a year ago, does seem a bit of an overreaction, doesn't it? But as you say, Dan, it's not that funny, because I have to say it was horrible. It's my country, and we were there on Remembrance Day when, of course, we commemorate all those amazingly brave, mainly young men who gave their lives for this country so it could be free and not under the jackboot of tyranny. And here we are with two coppers the same age as many of those guys who gave their lives, coming to my door and in what I took as being tyrannical, really, just totally inappropriate. And as you said, I asked them, what is this hateful tweet I posted? We're not allowed to tell you. Who is my accuser? We're not allowed to tell you, but they are the victim, not the accuser. Doesn't sound like justice, does it, Dan?
I mean, that word should not be used, by the way. It should always be accuser. And of course, it's not justice at all. I mean, if it was justice, you would absolutely be told what the post was, so you could presumably justify it from a journalistic or a commentary or a free speech perspective. But I mean, Alison, come on, I read most of your posts on X. You're not posting anything illegal. Come on.
Well, I also have whatever 160,000 followers. I haven't had any of them saying, we saw something disgusting you posted. Obviously, we all get a bit of argy-bargy, don't we, from the odd person who says we disagree with you or you're horrible or whatever. And particularly, as you mentioned, Dan, since I started championing setting up the British Friends of Israel to try and help British Jews after the 7th of October massacres, I've got a lot more nasty commentary. You want children to die, that kind of thing. But
and that's what this is about, isn't it? You have clearly been targeted by the very powerful pro-Hamas lobby here. And they try lots of different methods. They try mass reporting. And in this case, I would say they're actually manipulating the legal process to try and shut down fair debate about the actions of Hamas after October the 7th.
I think until we know what the tweet is, I can't be sure, but I would bet my bottom dollar that it was people on the left who had been digging through my Twitter feed, looking for something that they could say caused offence. And I think the bar should be set very high for these things, stirring up racial hatred, stirring up whatever. You know, have I caused rioting? Have I caused attacks on people? I certainly hope not. And I think the trouble is, Dan, is it's so subjective, isn't it? What you and I would see as freely expressing our centre-right views, other people would see as hateful. But we can't have a legal system that's based on subjective views, can we?
No, and also, we don't even have the resources to police speech. I mean, the idea of regulating the internet is not only nonsensical, it's practically impossible. So just give up. What has depressed me a bit today, though, Alison, I mean, I've been looking on X and you have been trending and lots of people are talking about you. We saw the very important intervention from Elon Musk, but I turned on PMQs earlier, not a mention. I've watched a lot of the mainstream media today, aside from GB News, Sly News, BBC, aren't following up on this as one of the biggest stories of the day. And when I've been looking for senior politicians who you would think, especially on the Conservative side of things, this would be a cause they should be championing, the best I've got is from the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, who said, more from the thought police under a Labour government. We need to stop policing words on social media and tackle actual crime. My message to Labour: protect freedom of speech, stop the overreach and focus on keeping our streets safe. But I don't hold out much hope. And she's copied in Elon Musk. But Alison, do you see what I mean? It's like, where are the other senior politicians?
Yeah, well, Robert Jenrick reached out to me, who was the Tory leadership candidate, and he said he thought it was disgraceful. I've actually heard, Dan, from lots of so-called normal people saying they've had very similar things happening to them. And the Free Speech Union thinks this is up to about 65 a day of these things now, if you can believe it. So I think what's happening is that police forces find it relatively easy to sit on their backsides and scroll through social media. Plus, a senior Home Office source has said to me that chief constables, some of whom are quite woke, rather like pleasing the pressure groups who come to them with racism and whatever, Islamophobia, so they can say, oh, it's great, we've issued, so many non-crime hate incidents, and then they'll all go away happy that that's going on. And if you look at the figures, astonishingly, for Essex police solving crime, hardly any solving of burglaries or indeed sexual violence. The highest thing, one of the highest things is racial and religious aggravation and indeed hate crime. So that's where they're really good, is thought crime, not very good at the crime which actually endangers people's lives or makes them lose property. Or I would think that most of the people watching us, Dan, would want their taxes spent on actually policing as we understand it, stop preventing the public doing harm and catching the bad people, not going around and, getting people like me who could have said something a bit, slightly indiscreet or whatever. I'm not saying my Twitter record or whatever's X record is perfect, but I certainly think that this heavy-handedness is just un-British. Well, maybe now in Soviet Britain it is British.
But first, winter is coming and so is cold and flu season. Don't I know it? Viruses thrive in cold, dry air, and our immune responses weaken in colder temperatures. Now, I used to get sick often during these months, but I've avoided the flu all year, and I'm recovering much faster from when I get a little cold, like the past week. You've heard me talk about Verso before. I've been taking it for months now, and their products have greatly improved my immunity, especially Clean Being. It's made with research-backed ingredients that boost your body's defense systems to fight off viruses when you get introduced to them, preventing you from getting sick in the first place. A strong immune response isn't just about fighting off illness, but also managing your body's reaction afterward. Inflammation helps protect against viruses, but too much can cause pain, tissue damage, and slow recovery. Clean Being manages inflammation, keeping your body balanced so it fights sickness effectively without extra problems. This reduces pain and swelling, protects tissues, and prevents overreactions. Now, after taking Clean Being for some time, I don't get sick as often, I recover quicker, have an improved mental state, and more energy. So if you click on the link in the description in YouTube or Rumble, or head on over to buy.ver.so and use the coupon code Outspoken when you check out, you will save 15% on your first order. I'm just going to repeat that address for you: www.buy.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code Outspoken. The new Britain, Soviet Britain, it's utterly terrifying. And the thing is, Alison, I look at all of this from a macro point of view, and I believe it is intentional. Because if you look at the Southport massacre, and again, huge credit to you, huge credit to the Daily Telegraph. You are pretty much the only mainstream media organ, and your column specifically on the first day of this revelation, that has specifically questioned the cover-up over Axel Rudakabana, over the fact that he was charged with terror, that he was producing ricin, according to the charges, that he had an Al-Qaeda manual. Most of the media has literally ignored this. No one has asked a question of Keir Starmer or Yvette Cooper saying, what did you know when? But your column on this was something that bucked the trend, really, of the rest of the mainstream media. But I think it's intentional because what they did is try and terrify the plebs. Terrify people like me, terrify people like you, make us think, goodness, we could all end up in jail. They did that probably knowing, according to Liz Truss on this show and according to Priti Patel in your newspaper, The Daily Telegraph, who both say that Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer would have known about those potential terror charges, about the discovery of the rice and the discovery of the Al-Qaeda manual, and yet they were still going out and talking about misinformation, talking about the snake oil of populism. And I think this was all intentional. There is a genuine attempt by this Labour government to make people too terrified to speak out.
I think that's absolutely spot on, Dan. And I think what we always see when these potentially Islamist-linked crimes are committed, there's an immediate a sort of schedule of things they do, which, as you say, is warning people against speculation, criticizing people for potential racism, misinformation. Now, I think the majority of British people knew after that Southport horrific massacre in which 3 little girls died, I think people knew there was something very wrong with that crime. And I was enraged because the first, I think from the police, the first statement was to describe the attacker as Cardiff born. Now, you know, Dan, I'm a proud Welsh woman. And I thought, we don't have many Welsh men who allegedly run amok with a knife in a room full of little girls. So I think people immediately knew this smells bad, doesn't it? This is something completely other, alien, horrible. And that's why people were getting upset and wanting to hear. And the authorities didn't want to disclose what they knew. And as you say, quite rightly, don't tell me they wouldn't have known pretty quickly that this individual was allegedly making a bioweapon in their kitchen. That information is going to go straight to the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister and to the security services. So it's extremely serious. And I think the idea is, let's not give these plebs a reason to kick off. But in fact, what happened was that backfired, and then people got very upset and angry. And I would say that the alleged murder of 3 beautiful little girls was a cause to get upset and to be very angry and to wonder what manner of person is this that's living in our country who carries out this barbaric slaughter. But as we know from my visit from the police expressing any of this, I mean, who knows, you know, they can call anything racism, Dan.
Yes,
even if you're...
And the tentacles, though, Alison, what really concerns me is they run so deep. You know, it really is the deep state, the blob in action, to the point where the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, discovers that Richard Tice is intending to ask a question about the cover-up in PMQs and literally opens the session by saying that he will not even accept it being raised, the question being raised. And then the mainstream media have all followed up on that. I mean, I know that it can be published. I mean, the Daily Telegraph, I presume they legaled your piece. They're not going to publish it unless they've checked contempt of court ruling. Not one mainstream journalist, and they've had lots of opportunities, has asked Keir Starmer or Yvette Cooper what they knew when. So it really does feel like the true sense of a cover-up where all of the establishment are working together to stop a conversation from being had.
Yes, and you know, you could expect at least a few raised eyebrows when the police insist that it's not terrorist related. Well, we'll have to take their word for that, Dan. But the presence of an Al-Qaeda how-to manual including details about lone attackers and so on. Some people might suggest or allege that there was some circumstantial evidence that made this look quite a lot like something a terrorist would do. But I did write something in the Telegraph, and it was very heavily lawyered, and you have to proceed carefully, because if any legal proceedings are underway, you obviously have to be very careful not to prejudice the trial.
Look, keep being brave, because we need you. I mean, honestly, Alison, there are so few people who I trust in the mainstream media anymore, and you are one of the handful. Don't let them get to you, because that is what they want. I'm delighted to see the Telegraph backing you in such a big way today, acknowledging this is such a big story.
Essex Police has issued a statement describing me as having given an inaccurate and unethical account of what took place. Now, I gave a very quick account as soon as it had happened to Toby Young, who's the General Secretary of the Free Speech Union. It was, to the best of my recollection, obviously I was very shocked. So I didn't know what happened second by second, but the key points are they wouldn't tell me what I'd done wrong, what I'd said, and they wouldn't tell me who'd accused me. So those key points remain, and I think probably Essex Police are extremely embarrassed and defensive, as we've now shone a spotlight on their very poor record of solving other crimes while being prepared to harass blameless middle-class ladies of Essex.
Leave the middle-class Essex woman alone, please God. Allison Pearson, goodness me, it's going to be a great episode of Planet Normal this week. I cannot wait.
My podcast partner, Mr. Liam Halligan, is rather jealous that I was the splash of the Telegraph. So, Dan, if I'd gone out and punched a policeman, I'd probably have got better treatment than actually just. That's the truth, isn't it? Those people at Manchester Airport who were involved in a brawl with policemen, and indeed with one policewoman who I think was quite badly injured.
Broken nose.
We haven't heard much about those people being sued or charged, but instead we have the comical spectacle of some tweet which may or may not have offended one person in Islington eating their mum beans. So give my cynicism. Look, I just, I hope it works out, because it is scary, and I'm sure they probably will try and drag me through a process, but I can't honestly see anything. I don't think I've done anything wrong.
No, and we have to stand up against this, because as you say, we have to be able to offend sometimes too. We have to sometimes be able to make mistakes when it comes to our speech. I mean, if the COVID pandemic taught us one thing, it's that actually it's not always right to trust the official narrative. Sometimes we do have to take those risks. Every now and then you get something wrong.
Remember, Dan, I was kicked off Twitter when I said I don't think any child should be given the COVID vaccine because it's unproven and children don't generally die from COVID. So it's not, the risk outweighs the benefits. There were no benefits and it was all risk. And I was kicked off social media for that misinformation, which turned out to be true.
Exactly. Well, thank God for Elon Musk. Thank God for Allison Pearson. Keep on fighting. And as I say, wow, Planet Normal, Allison's podcast with Liam Halligan, is going to be must listen this week. Such a pleasure to have you on Outspoken for the first time, Allison. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.